It's hard enough as it is to choose to eat differently than most everyone around you just on a normal basis. But in the holiday time, when you're seeing a lot of other friends and family members and you're different, you're acting differently, you're eating differently.
The holidays are often a tricky season, and not because people lack commitment, but really because everything around them fundamentally changes for a few days, a few weeks even. And so, one of the biggest challenges that I see is this disruption to their routine. They've often spent a considerable amount of time and effort building a new structure that works for them and helps them to be successful. The holidays can often be one of the first big tests to this structure and its potential fragility as they're traveling, they're staying up later, they're eating at unusual hours, maybe even skipping meals. And this kind of instability has direct impacts on their cravings, their mood, their metabolic control. The second challenge I see a lot is the social pressure, which one's one that takes people by surprise a lot. People don't want to be a complicated eater at the table. They don't want to feel guilty turning down food that someone has made with love or is an old family recipe. So they say yes to things that don't actually serve their health, and not because they want them, but just because they don't want to disappoint anyone around them or start a conversation about their diet that they're not ready for. Then there's the reality that most holiday environments are built around sugar and refined carbs. You can walk into a room feeling grounded, but then suddenly you're surrounded by foods that hit all of these comforting reward pathways that can make it harder to stay connected to longer term goals. And then finally, maybe most importantly, is this kind of all or nothing way of thinking. Someone has a moment where maybe they eat something off plan, and instead of treating it as just one data point, they spiral, thinking, now I've blown it. So yeah, to heck with all this. And that kind of mindset can really derail people more than any single food really could. So the real challenges I see aren't about willpower. It's about these disruptions to routines, circadian rhythm, emotional expectations, social dynamics, or pressure to be flexible in an environment that's not really designed very well for metabolic stability. And so I find when you name these things, you say them out loud, you talk to your patients about it and kind of give them the heads up, then they find that they feel a lot more capable of navigating this season, and doing it with intention.
I think prioritizing yourself overall is harder to do during the holidays than it is any other time. It's hard enough as it is to choose to eat differently than most everyone around you just on a normal basis. But in the holiday time, when you're seeing a lot of other friends and family members and you're different, you're acting differently, you're eating differently, you may even look different than you did the last time you saw everyone. And that's a conscious choice. And people struggle with prioritizing themselves and they all want to be people pleasers. So when somebody comes up and says, "Oh, hey, you can have just this one bite," it's hard for them to prioritize their goals in that moment while they are faced with someone handing them something. It's hard to just like put it down or find little tips and tricks that you can use in order to get through those situational times.
The holidays are when metabolic therapy either gets shaky or becomes the place where you finally lock in the discipline that carries you through the next year. So let's talk through the traps, the mindset, and the strategies. The holidays are the time of year when people get ambushed by three main things. Number one is the idea of just one bite. Let me have just one bite, or one bite can't hurt, right? Or maybe if mom sees me eat at least one bite, she won't be mad at me for skipping her dessert, right? Holidays are full of well-meaning people, and often it seems they try to feed us like they believe love equals carbohydrates. Most of them have no idea what a carb even is. But for those of us using metabolic therapy for our mental health, just one bite isn't a bite. It's a biochemical decision with consequences. Number two on our ambush list is emotional landmines. Now, unfortunately, food is tied to things like memories, grief, nostalgia, tradition, but emotional eating is just a flare that is signaling unmet needs in your brain or your body. It's not a reason to sabotage your brain. And the third ambush is guilt and perfectionism. If someone tells me they don't want to disappoint their family and they also don't want to disappoint themselves, I remind them, your brain is not a negotiation. You're allowed to protect your metabolic stability without apologizing for it. You don't have to be sorry or feel like you're letting someone else down.
So once we name the actual challenges people run into during the holidays, the next step is helping them build a mindset that keeps them steady. Not perfect, just steady. So one of the first things I work on is shifting the goal away from perfection. Metabolic stability doesn't require a flawless execution, but it does require consistency, whether that's in meal timing, protein intake, healthy fats, hydration, sleep. If we can get these anchors to stay mostly intact, then the system holds. So I remind clients that you don't need a perfect holiday season, you just need a stable one. I also help people get really clear on their why and make sure they remember that. When someone can say, I feel calmer, I sleep better, my mood is more stable when I stay on this diet, that internal motivation is way more powerful than trying to resist a cookie out of willpower. So the goal is to make decisions from alignment and not restriction. For social events, we end up talking a lot about proactive planning and trying to remove friction points. So eat a protein and fat forward meal beforehand so you're not navigating a buffet when you're starving. Bring a dish that you feel good about and want to share. Decide your boundaries before you walk in the door so you're not negotiating with yourself in real time. And then there's the emotional side of things. So giving people language for moments when someone pressures them or pushes food on them. Instead of long explanations, we practice simple, neutral lines like, that looks great, but I'm good right now, thank you. People are always so relieved when they realize they don't need a whole speech or explanation. They just need one sentence that feels true and gives them some empowerment. And finally, I remind clients that resilience really ultimately comes from how they recover and not how they avoid. So if they choose something off plan, we don't make a big deal of it. We instead put the focus on how they felt, how it affected their mood, their sleep, their focus, and then we try to pivot back to their baseline goals. One decision doesn't define progress, but how you approach the next one does. So helping people stay consistent is really about reducing decision fatigue, preparing them for predictable social dynamics, and teaching them to stay connected to the version of themselves that they're trying to protect.
My practice is very community focused. I host a small group of individuals who meet regularly in a chat group and then once a week on a Zoom call. In those calls and during the chats, we discuss different situations that may approach that we would have to handle, tactics for handling those things, and we're in communication anytime. There's no time of day that we couldn't just pop a message on there like, I'm struggling, and somebody else from the group would answer and say, hey, let me help you. Let me be here for you. So I really value that community aspect because no one should be going through any of this alone. We as humans weren't designed to traverse life alone. And if we have a community that we can use as support, even if we're not in person, and that's the beauty of it, it's not in person. So the people who we are closest to physically aren't often on the same journey as we are on. So it's very important to find members that understand what you're going through, have been through it themselves, or are actually struggling along with you while you help each other navigate these situations.
When I talk to people about the holidays, I remind them that metabolic therapy is not a diet. It's a medical intervention for the brain. The holiday mindset that saves me and others is simple. And listen up here, there's several, but number one is gold. Discipline is not restriction. It is protection. I'll say it again. Discipline is not restriction. It is protection. You are not missing out. You are choosing your mind over temporary pleasure. The second mindset is that food is fuel, not entertainment. This one is very hard to accept because we spend our entire lives with our food and our fun intertwined as one. Once the brain is stable, you start realizing, I don't need the fireworks in my mouth. I need the fireworks in my mitochondria. That means sticking to our script that works best for us. The third mindset is that your plan must match your purpose. The fourth and final mindset is having boundaries during the holidays is not rude, it's responsible. When your mother or someone else close to you pressures you to eat a dish they cooked, especially when they say something like, I made this for you, or I made this because you like it so much, or what's the matter? You don't like it anymore? You can simply say, I love you, but I'm taking care of my brain. It's short, respectful, unshakable. This will hopefully gain you some respect and admiration from others. Once your plan matches your purpose and you reconnect to your why, you can step into the holidays with purpose instead of pressure.
When I talk to clients about navigating holiday meals, I actually first talk about moving the focus away from food altogether. I remind them that holidays aren't really about the menu. They're about connection, rituals, conversations, laughter, and being around people that they care about. Food is part of the environment, sure, but it doesn't need to be the main event. On the practical side, though, I try to keep the guidance simple because people don't need more rules when they're probably already feeling pretty stretched thin, as we all tend to be during the holidays. So they need a plan that feels doable and grounded. So my first tip is always to start the day with stability, right? A protein, fat-forward breakfast helps keep blood sugar steady, reduces cravings later. It makes it so much easier to make intentional choices at an afternoon or evening gathering. When clients are skipping meals to kind of save up, they almost always walk into events in a biologically vulnerable state, right? They're hungry, they're overstimulated, and they're more likely to get pulled off track. At the event itself, I say build your plate around protein first, right? Turkey, ham, salmon, roast beef, whatever, anything that gives you structure. Then add in our healthy fats, low starch vegetables. That one decision can kind of help set the entire metabolic tone of the meal. I also encourage people to bring one dish they're genuinely excited about, that they enjoy, not just a sad substitute, but maybe even something they would enjoy at any time of the year. It doesn't have to be a holiday recipe. So creamy cauliflower mash, cauliflower mac and cheese, Brussels sprouts with bacon, deviled eggs, keto pumpkin pie. And if you have at least one anchor food that feels comfortable and satisfying, you don't feel deprived or left out. Another approach that works really well on the other side is to maybe treat it like an excuse to try something new. Pick a fun recipe that you're curious about and make it your contribution. It turns the whole thing into a creative project instead of a restriction. People love trying new dishes, and you get to bring something that feels like an expression of you, and not just a workaround for your dietary needs. And then when it comes to swaps, trade mashed potatoes for cauliflower mash or a loaded mashed cauliflower. Use almond flour, coconut flour, or I even used macadamia nuts as like a breadcrumb topping. We don't always say, sugar-free sweeteners are okay, but when it's the holidays, get out the allulose, the stevia, and do a little bit of baking and experimenting to give yourself a sweet treat. Choose veggies roasted in olive oil, butter, or ghee instead of the sugary glazes. Treat yourself to the dark meat and get a little extra fat. Go for the really decadent, creamy sauces. Try to avoid anything thickened with, flours or contains added sugar, but these kind of swaps help keep the meals feeling festive without throwing somebody out of their therapeutic ketone range. And then I always remind clients that you're allowed to savor your food, right? Keto isn't about eating bland things just to stay on a plan, but it's about building meals that keep your brain stable and taste genuinely good. So enjoy your plate. Slow down, make it pleasurable, because that's part of metabolic health too. And of course, as I've said, if you do have a moment where you choose something off plan, it's not a crisis. Just pay attention to how it affects your mood, your energy, learn from it, and then move right back into your baseline for the next meal. One choice doesn't define the season. So the goal during the holidays isn't to just get through it. It's to create meals that you enjoy, make swaps that feel natural and still festive and comforting, and support the version of yourself that you're working so hard to preserve.
While it's very important to me to maintain my goals during the holiday season and anytime, it's not always important to my clients. And I have to be respectful of that and their decisions. Some people are in a situation where they're faced with grandma's favorite famous pie, and they're not going to live a life where they don't have a piece of that. And that is something that we need to consider. We often talk about the consequences of those choices and how we're going to handle the consequences. So maybe somebody isn't going to stay completely keto, or maybe somebody's not going to choose to create a swap. They may choose to eat the real thing, but understand by that choice that this may happen or this may happen, and what am I going to do to solve that problem? It could be as easy as I'm going to drink a cup of coffee with it so that it takes that sweetness away, or it could have a little bit more lasting long-term effects. And what would we do in place to make us recover faster? And we have those tools now. We know that we can make changes if we go off plan, that we can get it back fairly quickly. But really being conscious of what those consequences are, the consequences to our choices, and understanding that we are capable of making those choices, that it's not up to anyone else to decide for us.
All right, let's talk about some practical food strategies. This is where I get passionate, really where the boots hit the ground. So here's what works for me and others. Plan your plate before the event begins. So for my aggressive approach, that might mean fasting before an event, or maybe eating one large OMAD on the holiday itself, and then fasting the day after. Decide in advance what you're eating. Better yet, track it in an app the day before, making sure your macros are on point, and then also share it with someone for accountability. And say to yourself, I'm eating this, I'm eating that, I'm skipping the rest. All your decision fatigue will disappear. You just stick to that script that you made for yourself ahead of time. Next up, You can anchor your metabolism early in the day. This could mean electrolytes and water plus a high-fat meal, or even fasting depending on your protocol. Start with ketosis locked in. Don't wander into a holiday metabolic minefield unprepared. If you're tracking your macros for the day and you're going to end up eating a bunch more meat at dinner and your macros are off, you could have a high-fat meal earlier in the day to try to balance your macros out. This is where my first step helps. You plan ahead so you know exactly what you got going in your body. Then when the meal starts, have your fat first and then your protein. Whatever the environment, leading with fat and then protein stabilizes the brain and will blunt any impulse eating. Number 3 is to bring your own food, even if it feels awkward. I've been doing this forever now, so everyone is used to me breaking out a big bowl of beef fat at dinner and maybe even cooking some ribeye. Bringing your own food gives you the confidence to make it through the day successfully. Confidence removes awkwardness. So you might want to bring olive oil, butter, avocado, maybe a fatty meat dish. How about a keto dessert replacement or maybe some bone broth? It's whatever keeps your brain steady and works for you. It's going to be different for everybody. And the last thing is to have an exit plan. If the environment gets stressful, dysregulating, too many triggers, it's okay to take a walk, step outside for some fresh air, even leave early. Protecting your brain is more important than being polite. This is one I use for myself often. I like to go for walks or ride my one meal at events all the time just to get away. And for the kiddos, keep snacks constant, ratios consistent, and the structure of the day predictable. Predictability is the real gift. If you're tracking your food ahead of time and you only eat what is in your app, then the day is predictable and it is a real gift. Now, if you slip, correct it. Do not collapse. One bad meal is not a failure. It's data collecting. Fix the next one. Just make the next one better. Holidays don't have to derail you. With the right tools, you can make it through the season with clarity, confidence, and maintain your metabolic stability. And remember, metabolic therapy is not a seasonal hobby. It's a lifeline. And the holidays don't get to take that away from you. Protect your brain, protect your stability, protect your peace. And if you need a mantra for the season, try one of mine. I'll say, I fuel my fire. I protect my flame. Nothing on that table is worth losing my calm mind. Happy holidays, everyone. Stay metabolic and keep the momentum going.